Okay, guys, so this is going to be my review of well, this is actually, technically my second album review I've done on this channel. Well, no. I've actually, now that I think about it, I've done album reviews in the past, but no one seemed to give a fuck. But I always, want to branch out and do other stuff sometimes, because, talking about comics and fanfiction ideas is all fun and games, but sometimes, brother just gotta, branch out. You know what I'm saying? But anyway, so this is going to be my review, my album review of Sabaton, The Great War. Now, if you never heard of Sabaton, and if you're a metal fan, I'm not going to say where you've been under, you're sleeping on them, because you are, but I'm kidding. If you haven't heard of them, really good, but if you haven't heard of them, they're a metal band that essentially, their big thing is war. They sing all about history and the war that happened, that takes place throughout said history and the effects of those wars. In this new album, The Great War, in this album, this deals with World War I. Now, they have done World War I songs in the past, but this one is primarily set of World War I and its effects on the world around them, and hence why they call it The Great War. They should have, rather than just call it World War I, because everyone would have been like, there's another one? There's more than one? Because when you really think about it, World War I really felt like the end of the world. Like, imagine yourself in 1914, Europe. Or, let's go a little further, deeper into the shit. 1915, 1916 era Europe. It is hell on earth. It is complete hell on earth. The world was tearing itself apart in essentially what was, as I always called the World War I, a bad bar fight. It's literally a bad bar fight when you think about it, because when you... And I am no way a history buff. That title goes to my dad, who is obsessed with World War I, but, ironically, he doesn't give a shit about this album. But the point being is that, in a weird way, when you really think about it, World War I was kind of like a drunken bar fight that just got out of control and spilled out from the bar and into the street, and other people jumped in to get in there. Yeah. And then it can be coincided that one asshole came up from down the street to yell a bunch of racial obscenities, and that's how we got World War II. Paraphrasing, of course, but I'm not wrong at the same time. I don't know, that was a weird equation of making a bar fight equate to World War I and II. I'm getting off topic. Anyway, so, in this album, like I said, this is World War I centric, and a lot of these recent albums from Sabaton have been very themed. They've been heavily themed for a lot of their albums, and it's been very heavily stated in the last few. Heroes was about certain battles and certain people who showed great courage and defiance in the face of just great adversity and in combat throughout history in the album Heroes. Then in the previous one, the predecessor to the Great War, was The Last Stand, which was great battles throughout history that ended in a final stand among certain soldiers. As you can imagine, there was a song about the Battle of Thermopylae. There was also a song about the Last Stand of the Samurai with Shiroyama. There was also the Battle of the 189, who fought in the Battle of the Vatican in 1527, I believe. You see, the reason why I know all this shit of historical facts is because I listen to Sabaton. I learned more about history from these songs more than I ever did at history class, If that gives you any indication of what Florida educational system is like these days, here's your answer. So the Great War really gives the feeling of just a total apocalypse happening. It just feels like this just complete destruction of the world and everything else in between. It feels like you really get the sense of the world is coming to a fucking end and you are being dragged through the mud. And the thing was with this album was that they also really dictated that this war was hell. Not to say, like, the other, not to downplay, like, the other major wars throughout history, but this one really felt like complete hell on earth of just how the combat was and what kind of tactics were used and how how World War One changed not only the face of Europe but also the face of the entire world. Because when you really think about it, if you really give it some thought, World War One, a lot of the world's problems we deal with today, a lot of the world's greatest problems and adversities we deal with today, you can trace them all the way back to World War One. No, really. It's scary if when you really sit down and think about it, you can trace every fucking problem with the world, or 90% of them, back to World War One. Yeah. So, there's food for thought right there. But like I said, there's bombastic songs one after another. I think this has been like the most powerful, like, sounding album they've had. And what I mean is not to downplay like Heroes or The Last Stand or Calionis. The major thing with this album was that you really feel, and I really felt it too, was the whole feeling of just the despair and the rage and everything else in between with this story. Everything about this war feels chaotic and it feels grandiose. Everything like you feel sometimes in these songs, you really feel like you are trapped in the middle of a battlefield, of those trenches, especially like songs like The Great War, which is named after the album, and Fields of Verdun. You also have like other songs that really make you feel like just the total despair of what these soldiers were going through in those trenches and on the battlefield. You really get this just sense of it and just really grasp at it, and it really puts everything into perspective about this, what this whole war was about, which was kind of, like I said, kind of like a big bar fight. It's interesting to note, like I said, that there's just so much power behind this album. And again, not to downplay the power of the other albums, because every album from Sabaton is big, and it just gets bigger and bigger. It's like a better take of a Michael Bay movie when you think about it. It's like, yes, the effects and everything else gets more bombastic, but there's good in here. It's not like a Michael Bay movie where you're just watching shit explode with lack of story. There's story here, and every song feels like a great story behind it, and everything that is put behind it is just a masterpiece, because these guys really know their history. So, yeah. If you are a metalhead, and if you want to check out some, if you've never heard of Sabaton, I would say, give The Great War a look. I'd say definitely give this album a listen. I think my personal favorite songs on here are The Great War and Attack of the Dead Men, as well as I also enjoyed Devil Dogs. I really like that one. But again, if you are a Sabaton fan, if you haven't heard of this, I highly recommend it. If you are not a Sabaton fan, I would say give this a look. Especially, I highly recommend the historical cut, the historical version, which gives a intro to each song, and it's really damn good. And it also gives more of that impact of what this war was like. But anyway, once again, hope you all enjoyed this review, and I will see you guys later.